Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're stepping right into the shadows to dissect the anatomy of three deeply tragic and honestly incredibly chilling supernatural tales straight out of Bengali folklore. We're going to be looking at the Haunted Village Morgue, the mystery of the ghostly Biryani, and the terrifying legend of the Midnight Flute Player. But listen, we aren't just here for the jump scares. We're actually going to break down the underlying architecture of fear. We'll look at the human tragedy that binds these narratives together and the emotional core that makes these stories echo long after the lights go out. So let's just get right into it.
So here is our game plan for today. First, we'll look at the anatomy of fear. Second, curses of human greed. Third, unfulfilled hungers. Fourth, we'll dive into the power of parental love. And finally, escaping the supernatural.
All right, starting with Section 1, the anatomy of fear. Everyday mundanity turned macabre.
You know, these stories are incredibly effective precisely because they take completely relatable settings and twist them into epicenters of supernatural dread. I mean, they don't start in some distant Gothic castle, right? They start in places we all recognize. Let's take a bird's-eye view of our three distinct nightmares. Starting with the locations, we've got a quiet village morgue, a nostalgic old house in Palashpur, and the muddy banks of the Muktahari River. Then you've got the very human tragedies that poison these places in the first place: an abusive, greedy son, a marriage absolutely ruined on the wedding night, and the heartbreaking starvation of a poor young girl. And finally, we see the haunting that sprouted from those exact tragedies. We have the chilling drawer 444, a plate of fragrant biryani that literally turns to ash, and a ravenous water ghoul known as a pishashini. It's the ultimate example of the mundane becoming completely macabre. Just listen to this chilling warning from the veteran officer Rothin Babu to the new recruit Suman. He says, "That drawer 4404 over there, don't even think about opening it by mistake." It's such a simple line, but human curiosity is always the trigger, isn't it? Tell someone not to look, and they absolutely have to look. Sure enough, Suman opens that drawer, and the whole nightmare begins.
Moving right along to Section 2, Curses of Human Greed, Unmasking the Real Monsters.
In folklore, the horror usually stems from the grotesque greed and the blunders of the living. You know there are unwritten rules when it comes to haunted spaces, right? Well, our protagonists inevitably break them. They totally ignore dire warnings from the locals, like the mysterious groom warning Abhra to stay away from the Palashpur house. Then, they investigate dangerous places alone at night, like Suman staying late in the morgue, or the brother wandering onto that desolate riverbank. And crucially, they allow nostalgia and innocent memories to completely blind their judgment. Stepping out of line like this, it's basically handing an open invitation to the supernatural.
But we have to remember, the true monsters are actually the ones who created the curse to begin with. Take Suthin, for example. Even in death, his ghostly apparition stalks the village morgue to violently extort money from the living, which perfectly mirrors his abusive behavior toward his father in life. Then you have Sajal, a guy who married purely for property and emotionally destroyed his bride, Pujarini, on their wedding night, driving her straight to her grave. It is their earthly, human greed that warped them into these terrifying, vengeful entities that are now trapped in the physical world.
Which brings us to Section 3, Unfulfilled Hungers and Vengeance.
So, these spirits are anchored to our world not just by greed, but by intense, unfulfilled desires. We're talking literal starvation and emotional starvation. To really understand this, we have to look at the terrifying legend of the Pishashini. A Pishashini is a ghoul driven by insatiable hunger. Down at the Muktahari River, this spirit manifests to consume all the fish, completely decimating the livelihoods of the local fishermen in the process. The market goes empty, the fish are rotting, and the locals are terrified. This isn't just your standard spooky ghost. It's a manifestation of sheer, ravenous desperation that destroys an entire local ecosystem out of pure spite and hunger.
And notice the stark contrast here between human nostalgia and spectral reality. Abhra returns to Palashpur, completely drawn in by the warm, wholesome childhood memory of his old landlady, Ranu Pishi, and her famous, fragrant mutton biryani. It's a beautiful thought, right? But then, the horrifying reality hits. The very second he goes to take a bite, the feast turns into black ash and crawling insects. It's a spectral trap deliberately designed to bind his soul. It's this brilliant, super jarring juxtaposition that shows exactly how spirits weaponize our own hungers and comforts against us.
So why do these terrifying spirits actually continue to linger in our world? Because if you look beneath the jump scares, beneath the ashes and the decaying fish, there is something much deeper anchoring them here, and that is profound sorrow.
That leads perfectly into Section 4,
The power of parental love. Guardians from beyond.
Some of these entities are actually tragic parents trapped in the afterlife, desperately trying to manage the sins and tragedies of their children. Think about morgue officer Rothin Babu. The man died of exhaustion dealing with his abusive son Sudin. But Rothin Babu's spirit stays behind for 25 years, guarding that morgue, physically trapping his son's monstrous spirit in drawer 444, just so he can't harm innocent people. On the flip side, Ranu Pishi does the exact opposite. She orchestrates an elaborate illusion, luring innocent people like Abhra to the house, just to use them as bait to punish Sajal, the man who humiliated and killed her daughter Pujarini. It's a truly heartbreaking side to these hauntings.
Let's actually trace the tragic origins of the Muktahari River curse step by step. Step 1. A desperately poor young girl just wants a single meal of big fish. Step 2. Because of that vulnerable desire, she's lured away and murdered due to someone else's greed. Step 3. Her heartbroken father sits by the river playing his flute in absolute grief until he too just vanishes into the mist. And finally, step 4. Years later, their bones are unearthed from the sand, awakening their tormented spirits. The daughter becomes the ravenous Pistaccini we talked about, and the father becomes the phantom flute player.
And this sets up honestly one of the most powerful moments in folklore. The ghostly flute player steps right between the monstrous Pistaccini and our innocent protagonist, pleading, "Don't do this, Ma. You have punished those who wronged you. Let this good man go." He plays his flute, and the terrifying monster instantly soothes and fades away. It shows us that a father's eternal love is quite literally the only thing powerful enough to calm the rage of a monster.
Finally, we arrive at Section 5, escaping the supernatural, surviving the unseen.
So, our mortal protagonists find themselves completely powerless against these entities. They literally can't fight back. So how on earth do they survive? Well, survival here isn't about physical strength. First, Suman is trapped in that freezing morgue by the monster Sudin, but he's saved because the ghost of Rothin Babu bursts out of drawer 444 and attacks his own son, giving Suman the chance to run. Second, Abhra is trapped in the illusionary house, but he survives only because the spirits of Ranu Pishi, Pujarini, and Sajal start fighting amongst themselves over their past sins, which gives him a split second to slip out the back door. And third, the brother is about to be consumed by the Pistaccini, but he's spared because the flute player's ghostly plea intervenes. In every single case, humanity survives the supernatural strictly through the intervention and infighting of these tragic, parental spirits.
I want to leave you all with this final thought today. If the ghosts of our past are born from unspoken grief and human greed, what unseen burdens are we leaving behind for the future? You see, these folklore tales aren't just about jump scares, they are reflections of our own actions, our own greed, and our own capacity for love. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope this breakdown helped you see the brilliant anatomy behind these stories. Keep exploring, keep learning, and I'll catch you on the next one.